Hello everyone, welcome back to another Flange time with Flange Master Tal. As always, I'm your Flange Master of Tals, and I hope you all remembered to bring a towel and are flanging it up. We're going to be talking yet again about Epic and Fortnite and Apple and Google and Microsoft and what's all going on with the craziness. Bunch of new stuff keeps on happening and want to keep you all up to date and kind of give you some, I guess, interpretations of what's going on. I've been doing my best to find actual valid legal opinions. The best and the one with the most content, I guess, has been Hogue Law. There should be some links in the description below to connect you to his content if you want to take the time to watch it. But it's like over 4 hours worth of stuff with Hogue Law, so I understand if you'd rather have a summary of it, but it's definitely worth watching if you have the time and the desire to flange that up. And before we get flanging, just a quick reminder, make sure to subscribe down there and hit that bell icon for notifications. Check out the live stream on Twitch and YouTube. I multi-stream to both platforms. And let's flange it up. So we don't really have any articles or anything we'll look at. We'll just do a quick talking head kind of flange today. I went to my hotkeys. I was like, let's go to the thing. That I was like, wait, we don't have a thing because it's just the lawsuit documents. We don't really need to just scroll through that. Anyways. So basically what's happened here is Microsoft's now backing Epic and being like, yo, we don't want Unreal Engine to get messed up. A lot of our developers and stuff we do uses Unreal Engine, so that'll screw with our stuff. So basically Microsoft is getting behind Epic. Oh, and of course we can't forget about xCloud not being allowed on iOS because and this is where I'll definitely criticize Apple. Apple definitely has some overbearing and overly restrictive terms of service and also their own interpretations of their terms of service. I think they go way too far. Like this whole thing where, they allow Netflix and video streaming services like Netflix, Amazon Prime, etc., but you can't have Google Stadia or xCloud or game streaming services. It doesn't really make sense. They're not running the game code on your phone. They're streaming it. So it doesn't make sense why Apple's doing this. I think it only hurts them. And it seems like the reason they're really doing that is so they don't have competitors to Apple Arcade on their own ecosystem, which actually would add to Epic's arguments in court. We'll have to see how that flanges up. But what we are here to mostly talk about is how things have changed up a little bit now that Microsoft's jumping. So basically, Microsoft's been like, yo, the Unreal Engine thing, we care about that. That's what we're backing. So they're not really backing all the Epic wanting, with the injunction. This is all focusing mostly on the injunction. Epic's got that injunction where they want Apple to not just allow them back on the developer program for Unreal Engine, but they want Fortnite back without the revenue share and their own payment option and all that, which seems like a bit much. If they had done that injunction and been like, hey, we just want Unreal back, we're not going to worry about the other stuff, that's for the court fight, we just want Unreal Engine SDK developer tools access, we just want that back for Unreal Engine just because I'll screw over a bunch of developers that have invested a whole bunch in Unreal Engine. That would be totally fine. But the thing with that injunction is Epic's like, no, we want all. We don't want to go back just to the status quo. We want the status quo where we have our own payment processing and all that. So, and it comes across like Epic's trying to force Apple to get Epic's way so Epic can have some leverage and be like, well, that's working out pretty good now, isn't it? Well, why don't you just keep on doing that? So that kind of seems like what Epic's getting at, even though it's might not be the best idea strategically. A lot of people are seeing through their PR campaign stuff. So, I don't know. Anyways, Microsoft's jumping in and they're like, yo, we support you on the Unreal Engine thing, but not the Fortnite thing. And Phil Spencer made a tweet and Tim Sweeney retweeted it and all that nonsense. And I'm kind of left sitting here wondering, well, Phil Spencer, did you really think out the full possible long-term consequences? Let's say you back Epic and they win. Now your platforms don't get to be open anymore because that's ultimately what Epic is going for, is no only open platforms. and no walled gardens. Tim Sweeney absolutely hates walled gardens. I don't like how walled gardens are handled in a lot of ways, but people need to have the option. And that's where this gets even more interesting, because it's like, well, and I'm speaking as if I'm Tim Sweeney. It seems to me like Tim Sweeney's like, well, I believe in openness. I think everything should be open, which implies maximum choice. But if you force people to be open, you take away choice. So to me, I'm like, wait, Tim Sweeney, aren't you kind of contradicting your own ethical premise by forcing openness on the market? Shouldn't that be a consumer choice, and then openness wins because it's better on its own merit? And then it gets even more squirrely for Microsoft, as Richard Hogue from Hogue Law pointed out. Well, basically what Microsoft is doing is saying, well, if someone's in breach of terms of service, a business contract, then if that breach would cause significant harm, then that breach should be unenforceable. And I'm sure you all can see where this is going. And this is Hogue Law's thought. This isn't my own original thought. Got to be clear there. So basically, Microsoft is probably unintentionally supporting people in breaking their own terms of service, and then turning around and saying, oh yeah, well that's going to harm too many small developers, so you gotta let us break your terms of service. And then it's like, well, what's the point of a terms of service? People can just like pretty much do whatever they want anyways. So it's like, it gets into some interesting territory where it's like, do you guys realize the full implications of what you're arguing for here? And I'm not an Apple fan. I do not like Apple's products. I've only owned an iPhone once. I'm a PC person. I'm not an Apple person. I very strongly dislike a lot of what Apple does. But this is not the way to change how Apple does its stuff that's, I believe, detrimental to the market and consumers. And this is just so ridiculous. It's like, Tim, Phil, do you guys realize the direction you're pushing things right here? When that's the thing, is like, if when this comes back around on them, and you know, I kind of wish I was a developer on Game Pass, so I could be like, yo, I'll just break the terms of service and say the exact thing you said to Apple there, Microsoft. How do you like that? And that's the thing, Microsoft would not like that. That's the thing, you reverse the situation around and you make it Microsoft instead. Microsoft would pretty much be doing what Apple's doing if Microsoft were the target of this. So there's many layers of hypocrisy and short-sightedness and just not thinking through the full potential consequences of their actions and arguments. And I can't wait to see how this ends and where it winds up, although I really hope it doesn't wind up forcing openness on everyone. And I believe in open platforms, open source, all that stuff. I'm a huge into it, huge fan of it. I think it's great. But it needs to succeed on its own merits. If you just force it on people, that's just as bad as forcing walled gardens on people. You can't force these things on people. You need to give people choice. And that segues neatly into another factor of this is, well, businesses should have the ability to choose who they do business with. And that's part of the injunction here, is basically Epic's like, no, you have to do business with us. Oh, we violated our contract with Apple. So, and now we're going to force you to continue to do business with us, even though not only has Apple said, no, we don't want to do business with you, they're like, actually, we do want to continue doing business with you. You just need to abide by your terms of service. And I'm pretty much parroting Richard Hogue here, but you might not like the Apple's terms of service. I'm pretty much saying exactly what he said in his video, but I mean, it's just, he really nails the point. So sorry to kind of copy you, Richard Hogue, but you nailed the point too well. Is like, they should have the right to choose who they do business with. And the right to choose is kind of fundamental to North American culture, where it's a huge part of our culture to have the right to choose who to contact, who to communicate with, who to do business with, etc., etc. And basically, if Epic gets their way, they could potentially undermine the whole idea of having the right of who to choose to do business with. Because if all platforms are mandated to be open and there's no more walled gardens, anyone can just release anything they want on any platform. Now these businesses don't even have a motivation to even do these platforms because they're like, screw this. We it's just a free for all now. We don't even want any part of this because of the liability that comes with it. Like Mr. Hogue from Hogue Law was citing examples like, well, what if one of these entities violates international law in some sort of significant way? You just have to let them on because openness is better. Like it doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. There's like a serious logical failing. And again, I'm all for openness. I want open platforms to win. I want openness to win. I want open source to win, but it needs to win on its own merits. And even though I lean towards open, there's a reason why the closed walled gardens are more successful. And there's a level of safety and security, not just technologically, but in kind of peace of mind, where it's like, these entities are curating this stuff, they're flanging it up, they're moderating it, they're making sure nothing crazy gets in there, or at least doing their best to prevent it and mitigate it when it does happen, because it still happens occasionally. And that gives a lot of customers a certain peace of mind, especially Apple. People that are really into Apple seem to prefer that more, and that's totally fine. They should have that option. I might not like Apple personally. I might not be a big fan of how they do a bunch of things, but people should still have that choice. And to take that choice away is more egregious than how Apple does things, in my opinion. And feel free to disagree. That's what the comments are for, or hit me up in a live stream or whatever. But I can't help but be like, well, I think what Epic and now Microsoft backing them are pushing towards would actually be harmful to consumers and to the marketplace in general, because we should have that choice. And that's kind of the underpinning of capitalism and free markets, and kind of our whole model of economics is kind of not really kind of, but in a large massive way based on freedom of choice and freedom of whom to do business with. And like, take that away, it's like, well, all these people who get mad at communism and socialism, I've got a more balanced perspective on that. That's for another time. That's not for now. But I'm not anti-capitalist. I'm not anti-modern socialism. The socialism of the past is different from the socialism now. We do have to make it that nuanced distinction. I don't want to get too far down this road, but when I say socialism, I do mean modern socialism, not the socialism of the past, which is very different from what we consider to be socialism now. English language linguistics, you like that. So anyways, it's kind of one of those weird things, because I'll say socialism, people will think one thing when I mean another. Anyways, don't want to get too caught up on this. So, the point I'm getting at is, if we force open platforms, is that actually a move more towards a command market economic model, which is the economic underpinning of communism, is that the government makes all these decisions, they control the markets, they control all the things, and capitalism is kind of the opposite in a lot of ways, where it's like, well, we'll just kind of take a more laissez-faire, hands-off approach, more live and let live, and we'll try and just regulate problems as they come up and try not to anticipate anything too much, because that can kind of backfire on us. And that's kind of why that's why we have this situation now, is because instead of trying to like pre-crime it, if we want to use that term, our model is more like, we'll deal with it as it becomes a problem, and kind of on a case-by-case, adapt to it as it happens kind of flange. And I mean, the fact that communisms have had to adapt certain levels of capitalism shows that there is definitely a superior aspect to the capitalist business model. Anyways, we're getting a little bit off into the weeds, I feel like, here. What I'm trying to get at is, if we force certain business models on businesses, we force on businesses who they can or cannot do business with, when there's no real harm factor, because there is a reasonable thing to be like, this business is doing harm, no one's allowed to deal with them because they're just too harmful. And TikTok comes to mind, but that's a whole different discussion we're not going to get into right now. Um, I'm not a big fan of TikTok or the Chinese government, how they do certain things either, but anyways, well, let's not go there. That's a different video. But I think y'all should get where I'm going with this is if we take away the freedom for businesses to choose who they do business with and how they do business within the limits of the law and causing harm to others, I feel like that kind of fundamentally compromises the whole underlying principle of capitalism, in that a huge part of capitalism is that freedom to choose and for markets to figure it out on their own and not have anything imposed on them. So the thing is, if the market chooses walled gardens in preference over open systems, well, open systems need to improve to be more competitive with walled gardens. And really, I've said this before, really what Epic should be doing here is they should be starting their own phone OS that's even more open than Android, even go as far as to make their own phones with the phone OS that could be installed on Android. I mean, Apple is kind of its own thing, but they can just go be its own thing. Like, it's not illegal for them to be a monopoly of their own products. Like, that's their products. They're allowed to do what they want. That's another factor. Is like, you make a product, you should have some degree of freedom to choose what you do with your product and how you operate with it and all these things. And it does get more complicated there, but like, to me, the freedom of choosing is very important. And the limit to that is causing harm to others. And that's, at least going from what Richard Hogan said, that's really what Epic's argument is going to come down to at the end of the day is how Apple does business with its monopoly over its own products. Is that harmful to others? And I'd say in some ways, yes, but is that so harmful as to deem them a Sherman Act violator and to impose things on them that might, in the long run, be bad for everyone? I get squirrely. So when Microsoft backs them up and gets in Epic's corner, I'm like, you guys realize that this is probably going to work against you and how you do business, Microsoft. Because how Microsoft does business, you know, they're more open than Apple, but they got in more trouble for things Apple's just as guilty of. With their own antitrust thing, which ironically, like, the browser market opened up around the same time. So the thing is, the trouble Microsoft got in didn't really matter because the market changed just around that time anyways. So it just was kind of a moot point. So that's the thing. Microsoft, whatever, I forget what the specific end result of Microsoft's own antitrust case was, but like, it kind of just didn't matter because the market changed on its own so quickly that it kind of made the whole fucking debate moot by the time they made a decision. And that could very well happen here, where Apple's like, you know what, we have been being overly restrictive, we should loosen up a little bit. And then, you know, they start allowing xCloud and Stadia and all these things, and they could wind up doing it just to take away from Epic's arguments and be like, yo, you know what, there are some things we've decided to change those things. Just because we feel like we want to do better, we're just going to change these things. Just because we want to do better as a company, we think that'll give us better business, better market share, make customers happier, potentially bring us more profit. And I mean, that's how Apple would frame it in a court argument anyways. But, you know, it's quite likely things are going to change by the time this even gets to any sort of decision. Like, it could take a freaking decade for this lawsuit to be settled. It's quite likely it'll wind up at a settlement or a withdrawal or something like that anyways. So, like, yeah, it's just, it leaves me sitting here being like, Microsoft, did you really think about what you're doing here? You get so blinded by not being able to have xCloud on Apple, which Apple should allow xCloud. Like, they don't really have a good reason to not allow xCloud on iOS other than Apple Arcade, which, you know, that gets to court. That'll work against Apple, but we'll have to wait and see. Anyways, the whole thing is just, it's fascinating to observe because I'm like, man, you guys are supposed to be CEOs. Like, you're supposed to be like long game, long range thinkers. Like, you're supposed to be like ahead of people like me, which are being like, yo, do you guys realize what you might be getting yourselves into here? So like I'm fond of saying, we'll have to wait and see what happens and how this flanges up. And I feel very conflicted because I don't really want either Apple or Epic to win. I'd prefer kind of a middle ground where Apple does open up, but Epic also kind of gets some consequences for being a bit silly about how it's doing its lawsuit. I think they're both in the wrong in different ways. I don't think any of these parties have clean hands. I think they each have their own things that are less than optimal how they do business. Like, hell, just with the Epic exclusives, it's like Epic. I've tweeted I can't speak today. I've tweeted at Tim Sweeney a few times being like, yo, Tim Sweeney, do you realize that you're undermining your own arguments with Epic exclusives just existing at all? And of course I won't, I'm not expecting a response, but I felt like throwing it out there just on the off chance. But truly though, just Epic exclusives alone undermines Epic's own arguments. You want open platforms, but you have exclusivity that's actually bad for consumers and takes away from consumer choice. But you're trying to say this is so consumers have more choice. Well, what the fuck, Epic? Get your shit together. Because your own actions undermine your own arguments in court. And it won't be hard for Apple to be like, yo, judge, Epic does the same shit. How about that? I mean, obviously it won't be argued in court like that, but that'll essentially be the effective argument, is be like, yo, judge, Epic's doing the same shit in a different way. So where does that leave us? Anyways, you should wrap this up. Let me know what you think in the comments, or hit me up in a live stream or on social media or whatever. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think Epic's in the right? Do you think Apple's in the right? How do you think this will go? Do you think Epic will win? Apple will win? Somewhere's in the middle? I'm curious what other people think out there. And just to reiterate my personal position, I think they're all in the wrong in their own ways, each entity, including Microsoft. I think they all got their own messed up shit, and no one's really got clean hands here. No one's really got a moral high ground of any seriousness here, and they've all got their own squirrely things that, if it was brought to full light in court, some of these judges in courts might be like, yo guys, that's not cool. Well, I don't know that for sure, but it seems like some of the stuff would be not judged well, I guess, to phrase it. But that's just my opinion. I'm curious what yours is. And I'm just totally having a brain fart right now. What I was just about to say. It's not been the most optimal day for me, unfortunately. Yeah, I guess we'll just give me a like if this video added value and you enjoyed it. Give me a thumbs down if not, but if you give me a thumbs down, please give me some constructive feedback and criticism comments. Try and be specific, please. It's just hard to take action on a vague and non-specific advice or feedback. And yeah, flange it up. Remember to bring a towel. Check out the live streams. Subscribe, follow, like, notifications, all that good stuff. Flange it up. Remember to bring a towel, and I'll see you later.